the science. I mean, as a scientist, I respect that. Oh, right. It's very, but you don't need it because you can just look at it 20 years ago, but science is very clearly shows causality and what's driving it.
There'll be only one case study in company terms, general terms, corrosion of the system. Are you guys doing that democracy project?
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, and then we now are their wing person, which is very exciting.
Race me doing the crowd management.
Yeah, that was our whole plan to form a democracy.
That sounds like
And
no.
then they took basically all the OCF stuff.
No worries.
Okay.
We all ready to go?
Yeah, nice and close to the microphone.
How's this? Can you hear me?
Yeah, great.
Good morning. Thanks so much for coming, everyone. My name is Saffron Zama. I'm the Executive Director at the Australian Democracy Network. And we here today are the members of the Stronger Charities Alliance. We're over 140 Australian charities. We're a very diverse group of organisations who work on a wide range of causes and represent a wide range of Australian communities. The one thing that we have in common is that we all really believe in the importance of advocacy as a part of the way that we pursue our charitable missions. And we come together to defend our right to speak up for our causes and communities. So today we're here to speak about the government's electoral law reform proposal that we expect to be passed this afternoon. It's a very wide-ranging package of legislation and we're just here to speak to one element of it. This bill contains a clause that would create a really severe restriction on how our organisations can participate in public debates around election times and speak up for the communities that we represent. There's no equivalent restriction that we're aware of in any other jurisdiction, and there is no public policy benefit served by this particular restriction, which we actually believe to be an error and something that has found its way into the bill due to the haste with which it was put together. So there's no reason for it not to be fixed, and the consequence of it not being fixed will be that all of our advocacy on behalf of communities and critical causes in the lead up to this election and elections following will be under a cloud, which is really unfortunate circumstance for us to be in. We're here today to call on the government to confirm as a matter of urgency that they are going to correct this error by amending the bill to make sure that charities can continue to participate in elections, speaking up for causes and communities and being part of the solutions that we are all working on: housing, gambling, healthcare, climate change. We're a very diverse range of organisations, and the nation really needs our participation to secure civic space and healthy democracy. You're going to hear from just a few of our members today. I'm going to start by passing over to Toby O'Connor, who's the CEO of the St Vincent de Paul Society.
Well, good morning all. I'm here talking on behalf of the St Vincent de Paul Society's National Council of Australia. Our founder, 200 years ago, said that charity doesn't operate without justice. And justice means advocacy in this modern time. Our 35,000 members across Australia are currently reacting to the crisis of living that people on low incomes are experiencing. Those members pass up their observations to us, and we pass those observations into the Parliament through advocacy. Can I also point out that 2 years ago, the Albanese government formed a network of blueprint experts from the charitable sector to come up with a blueprint to help the sector progress in 10 years. That report was given to the government in November of last year. One feature of this blueprint was that the advocacy of not-for-profit sector agencies needed to be guaranteed. We are disappointed that the left hand doesn't seem to know what the right hand is doing with the current legislation, and we urge the government to rethink how they want to implement this legislation so that the voices of the voiceless are heard in this House.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Alan Hewson, and I represent the Australian Council for International Development, which is a peak body that works with a number of international development and humanitarian agencies around Australia. Ordinarily, I'd speak in sort of meetings about the importance of Australia supporting democracy in our region, Asia Pacific, and how important it is that they support civil society and fund civil society to hold government to account and to hold power to account in the region. Today, we're seeing the unintended effect of this legislation being that in Australia, civil society and our advocacy may be stifled. And that's not an outcome that any of us would like to see. Our members regularly advocate around elections for the most vulnerable around the world to have their voices heard. We advocate for things such as clean water and sanitation around the world, for earthquake recovery, for humanitarian action in conflict settings, and for food during famines. If this bill passes as is, then that sort of advocacy may be stifled, and that would be a terrible outcome for everyone.
Hello, I'm Kelly O'Shannessy. I'm the CEO of the Australian Conservation Foundation. And I just wanted to say that charities make Australia better. We've made the health system better for people. People are fed because of charities. The Great Barrier Reef is protected because of charities. We're getting climate action because of charities. And the most really important ways that we do that is through advocating for governments to do the right thing by Australians. And that's through their policy development. And the most important time when governments and oppositions and candidates for election make their policies is in the lead up to elections. So we need to be able to talk to the Australian community, to be able to talk to politicians about what's really good for Australia, what good policies mean for people, for our climate, for nature in Australia. And these accidental reforms, if they're passed, will limit that. It will mean that we are unable to spend our charitable donations on talking to people around elections about what would be good to this country and for them in terms of climate action or health protection or whatever of the thousands of issues that charities work on. It'd be like saying to a union that you can't spend your membership fees on talking about policy or what's good for your members. So this is why we do believe it's a mistake, and we are calling on the government to fix that error before these laws are considered by the Parliament. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.
Question?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate by saying that there is an opportunity to avoid a serious harm to our whole sector today. There's no reason why it shouldn't be avoided, and we're calling on the government to urgently take the simple action that they need to do today to make sure that all of our voices and our communities aren't silenced into the future. Did anyone have questions?
Can you please outline how the amendments or the clause in the legislation will restrict your participation?
Yeah. I guess in simple terms, because it's a little bit technical, the bill will restrict how we can use our gifts, which are almost, for most charities, all of our income. So we receive most of that income as untied gifts, which means that the donors give us money and we spend that money to pursue our charitable mission in whatever way is most strategic at the time. So what's proposed would mean that none of that untied money could go into our campaign accounts to participate in election debates. And what we know from running charities, which collectively we have many, many decades of experience doing this, is that most charities will not have money that they can put into their campaign account to participate in election debate, and effectively that will silence us.
In terms of the gifts and the donations that are received by some of the organisations here, how much on average is going towards elections? What kind of ratio is being put towards?
As a percentage of all third-party spending, the whole charity sector is like a percentage of a percentage. It's a very insignificant amount overall. And on top of that, it's worth noting that we are already prohibited from having a political purpose. We cannot advocate for a political party or candidate. We only engage in advocacy to pursue our charitable mission. So compared to any other kind of third party, an industry association, a business, we are already incredibly restricted in how we spend money and how we engage in activities around election times. This would be just yet another layer of restriction that would be just actually not manageable from a practical operations perspective. So we know that because we run charities every day, we maintain our legal compliance every day, and unfortunately that will be the outcome if this bill is not fixed.
What is your interaction with the government around this legislation, especially in the last
Yeah, I guess I want to say on the whole that we have been able to speak to the government about this, and I do appreciate that they've been open to our feedback. They've taken our concerns on board, but if it all comes to nothing today, then effectively none of that consultation is really that meaningful. It's also been tricky because the time frame, as you know, has been really compressed, and so it has been difficult to be able to have the conversations that we've needed to have. Having said that, I do want to acknowledge that the Minister has met with us. They have taken the time to understand our concerns. They know how to fix them, and today they need to fix them.
And the other thing just to be clear about,
Yeah, please.
the other thing to be clear about is this issue of advocacy and putting a dampener on what charities can do. This has actually come about with the previous government. We made this clear to the government in our discussions with them around the blueprint. So that goes back for at least 9 months that we've had this flag on the agenda that we want this sorted. This legislation has now recently come into the House, but there's no question that the government didn't know our concerns around this aspect of interfering with the rightful role of advocating on behalf of those who've got no voice in this House unless it's through groups like the Society and other big charities and small charities alike.
We would like to be in conversation with them, and I know several of the Alliance members have been reaching out to various members of the coalition. I personally haven't been in those conversations, so I can't give you an update.
And just to be clear, the Minister has not guaranteed that it will come out today, so you don't actually know.
No, I don't know. I have definitely had conversations with them. We know that they know how to fix the bill. We've discussed the potential amendment that they would need to pass. What we don't know is whether it will make it into the final package, and that's what we're really concerned about.
Just finally, in a really short shot, what's the worst possible outcome of this legislation passing for Australians?
Well, from the perspective of Stronger Charities Alliance members today, as Kelly said, our organisations exist to serve communities and make Australia a better place. A critical part of how we do that is by advocating for the policies that will fix the problems like the housing crisis, the climate crisis, that are troubling Australians all around the country every single day. We are the only players in this building who come here from a purely public interest perspective. We don't have a political horse in the race. All we want to do is make the world a better place. And losing our voices in public debate would be, I think, a catastrophic error for the future of our country. And democratically, it just means that, as Toby said, thousands of people who receive our services, are our members, volunteer with us, will lose one of their major avenues through which they participate in democratic debate and civic life. And if you look around the world and see the state of democracies everywhere today, you do not have to be a genius to see that that would be a terribly retrograde move and an awful mistake that I really hope our government does not make today. Thanks so much, everyone.